"You won't believe what happened to me on my flight last week. I had finally managed to book a first-class seat, something I had been saving up for, looking forward to a calm, comfortable trip. But the moment I settled in, an elderly woman, clearly upset, stormed down the aisle, pointing straight at me. She claimed she deserved my seat, insisting that her age gave her priority over everyone else. At first, I tried to reason with her politely, explaining that the seat was assigned, but she wasn't having it. Her voice grew louder, drawing the attention of everyone around, and the tension in the cabin skyrocketed. The flight attendants approached, trying to calm her down, but she refused to listen. Every attempt at a compromise seemed to make her angrier, and passengers began whispering and filming what was unfolding. You could feel the unease spreading through the plane. What started as a simple seating issue was quickly turning into a full-blown confrontation. I tried to stay calm, focusing on my bag and my boarding pass, but inside, I was completely on edge. There was something almost surreal about watching someone so entitled push every boundary in sight, right in front of dozens of witnesses. And just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more intense, the crew made a move that left everyone gasping. As the flight attendants guided the elderly woman toward the front of the cabin, I could feel every eye on me. Some passengers looked sympathetic, while others shook their heads in disbelief. I tried to focus on my seat, on the small luxury of having space to stretch and a quiet corner for myself, but the tension made it impossible. Every few minutes, the woman shouted something, claiming that she was being unfairly treated and that airlines should respect seniors above all. Her words hung in the air, bouncing off the walls and making the normally calm flight feel electric with unease. I couldn't help but notice the contrast. Between her and the crew, the attendants were calm but firm, doing their best to maintain order while ensuring everyone's safety. There was a professionalism in their movements, a practiced efficiency that reminded me this kind of chaos wasn't entirely new to them. Yet even their patience seemed to have limits, and the way the woman's face twisted with indignation made it clear she wasn't going to give in. I glanced around at the other passengers. Some were filming on their phones, others whispered anxiously to their neighbors. You could sense the collective curiosity, people drawn to drama but also unsure how far this confrontation might escalate. I thought about what had led to this moment. It wasn't just about a seat. It was about entitlement, frustration, and maybe even personal grudges I would never fully understand. Just when I thought the scene had peaked, the captain's voice came over the intercom. It was calm but serious, and the words he chose made everyone shift in their seats. Something official was happening, and whatever was about to unfold would change the flight completely. The captain's announcement had everyone sitting straighter. Glancing nervously around the cabin, he didn't go into details, but the serious tone was enough to let us know this was more than a simple seating dispute. The elderly woman, however, didn't seem fazed. She continued to argue loudly, now pointing fingers at both the crew and passengers, claiming she had been disrespected in front of everyone. Her voice echoed down the aisle, bouncing off the overhead bins and making the tension almost tangible. I noticed a young mother across the aisle clutching her child tightly, her eyes wide with concern. A businessman in a suit muttered something under his breath about the woman holding up the entire flight. It was striking how one person's behavior could ripple through the plane, affecting everyone in different ways. Some passengers were anxious, others frustrated, and a few couldn't help but watch with morbid curiosity. Meanwhile, the crew tried to mediate, offering alternative seating, or even asking if she'd like to speak privately with the purser. But the woman refused every suggestion. Her insistence that she was owed the first-class experience created an almost surreal atmosphere, like a collision between entitlement and the rules that govern everyone else. I started thinking about what had brought her to this point. Was it a lifetime of feeling overlooked, or just a moment of pure stubbornness? Either way, the conflict had grown far beyond a seat. As the minutes stretched, whispers turned into murmurs, and murmurs into occasional gasps. Every time the woman raised her voice, the cabin seemed to hold its collective breath. Even I felt my heart racing, unsure if the next moment would bring a heated argument, a physical struggle, or something even more unexpected. The flight was no longer just a journey from one city to another, it had become a stage for chaos, and the climax was still waiting to unfold. By now, the entire cabin was tense, every passenger fully aware that something major was about to happen. The elderly woman had planted herself near the first-class section, arms crossed, refusing to move even as the crew gently tried to guide her to a seat that had been offered multiple times. Her voice had risen to a near shriek, echoing off the walls, and even from my seat, I could feel the anger and frustration radiating from her. People were shifting uncomfortably, some clutching their phones as if capturing every second would somehow protect them from the unfolding chaos. I could see the crew exchanging subtle glances, their patience fraying but their professionalism unwavering. Every attempt to reason with her was met with more accusations, claims that she was being humiliated in front of everyone, and demands that the airline do the right thing. The tension wasn't just about a seat anymore. It had become a test of authority, a struggle between rules and entitlement, and a deeply human clash that no one on the plane could ignore. Passengers whispered, some pleading silently with her to calm down, others rolling their eyes in disbelief. You could feel the energy in the air shift with every word she spoke. The young mother nearby shifted uncomfortably, holding her child closer, while the businessman muttered something about calling corporate. I could see the strain in the flight attendants' faces. They were trained for emergencies, but no training could fully prepare anyone for this level of human drama. Then, just as it seemed the confrontation might continue in a stalemate, the captain's voice came over the intercom again, firmer this time. The words he used made it clear that the situation had reached a point where action was unavoidable. Hearts were racing, and the cabin felt like it was on the edge of something that could explode at any second. Every passenger leaned in, holding their breath, waiting to see how it would all come to a head. Just when I thought the situation had reached its peak, things took an unexpected turn. The elderly woman suddenly pulled out a thick envelope from her bag, waving it in the air like a shield. She claimed it was a letter from someone important and insisted it proved she was entitled to the first-class seat. The cabin fell silent for a moment, everyone staring in disbelief, unsure whether to intervene or watch. Even the crew looked momentarily taken aback, exchanging quick glances as they tried to assess the legitimacy of her claim while keeping the flight under control. Her voice, already loud, now carried a sense of triumph. She began reading snippets from the envelope, making bold statements about special privileges and connections that supposedly overrode the airline's rules. Passengers muttered nervously to each other, some leaning closer to catch what she was saying, others shaking their heads in frustration. The young mother nearby looked more anxious than ever, and I could see the tension radiating from every corner of the cabin. The crew stepped up their efforts, trying to remain calm but clearly signaling that they couldn't allow the situation to escalate further. Security personnel were subtly moving toward the aisle, and the murmurs of passengers turned into audible speculation about what might happen next. Every second stretched longer than the last, the atmosphere thick with anticipation and unease. I felt my pulse quicken, realizing that this wasn't just a simple first-class dispute anymore. It had transformed into a battle of wills, rules, and pride, with everyone on the flight caught in the middle. And just when it seemed like the tension couldn't get any higher, the woman did something that left the entire cabin gasping, and no one, not even the crew, seemed prepared for what would happen next. The moment seemed frozen, every passenger holding their breath as the elderly woman waved the envelope with a defiant glare. The flight attendants had finally called for security to step in, their voices calm but firm, warning her that continued disruption could lead to immediate removal. For a heartbeat, she seemed to hesitate, scanning the cabin as if expecting an army of supporters to rise to her defense. But the murmurs from passengers told a different story. Most were tired of the drama, and many were quietly rooting for the crew to take control. Then, with one last dramatic proclamation about entitlement and connections, she refused to move. Security personnel gently guided her toward the exit of the first-class cabin. Resistance flared for a moment, but in the end, she was escorted off the plane. Gasps and murmurs filled the air as the cabin finally began to relax, relief spreading like a wave. People returned to their seats, and the quiet hum of the engines replaced the tension that had gripped us for nearly an hour. Just when it seemed the chaos was over, the twist no one saw coming unfolded. One of the passengers who had been